Susie.
Rob. So, Rob, what do you know about underwater paleontology?
Uh, Not a lot. I mean, I normally dig my fossils up on the ground because that's how 99% of paleontology is done, and I don't think I could get wet by digging them up under the sea. What do you know about underwater paleontology?
Well, do you know, there was once this oil well that they were drilling in the North Sea, and they drilled a core to find out what rocks they were going through, and they drilled through a dinosaur bone. Amazing.
Nice.
Yeah, very cool. So today's paper, we're going to talk a little bit about some paleontology under the sea, but a bit deeper than you might be able to scuba dive to.
We're talking kilometres, yeah. I don't want to turn into a paleontologist soup by diving that far. I will be absolutely killed. Let's find out what happens. So, welcome back, Susie. I have to admit that I did replace you last week.
You did an entire episode without me.
I did an entire episode without you because I was sitting down with Emily and you weren't able to join us. That's fine. But it was on that episode where we were talking about the Ediacaran fossils, not the Ediacaran.
Oh, did she say that? Yay!
Yes, she did. Yes,
right all along.
I sat down with Emily and we had a long chat about what it's like to do field work out there and what the early part of the fossil record is. So that was a lot of fun, and it was nice to catch up with her and also add some extra context and correct the mistakes that we may or may not have made. I say me, the mistakes that I may have made. Now,
so do you understand her paper now?
Yes.
Oh,
but it was also interesting hearing from Emily talking about what it's like to do the fieldwork. I think I think that's one of the reasons, the advantages of having the actual authors on is that we can talk about what their genesis to get to that idea was and what it's like actually collecting the data, which rarely comes across in the paper, right?
Yeah,
if you want to know what paleontologists actually work like, you need to talk to a paleontologist. Their papers gloss over that. I mean, as you said, when we were talking about that paper, you would have put in a picture of what it's like doing the fieldwork, or the school children that help them find the fossils, or the fishermen, or the stories of those are the things that really help contextualize what's going on. But we're going to swing in time really dramatically from the oldest stuff we've ever talked about to amongst the newest stuff we've ever done, which is some stuff that barely counts as fossils. So you've chosen for us some whale paleontology today, yeah?
I have, and actually this paper was a recommendation from one of our listeners. So this was a recommendation from Pim Casquez, who is not only one of our listeners, but has also featured on the podcast. If you listen to the bonus episodes on our Patreon, the one of our fieldwork in Morocco, so Pim is my postdoc at the NHM, and he messaged me the other day and said, hey, you should do this really cool paper I've just found, and I've just been reading about. And this was a paper that it's actually only just been published. It was published on the 10th of June. So it's, as again, we're bang up to date, Rob. Today's the 22nd.
Hot fossil news coming in your ears.
Today, I was thinking it's the 22nd of June, but it's the 22nd of July, which has just given me palpitations because I've got to finish a grant proposal the next week.
Oh no! Hey, I got my grant in last week, so I feel like I can. Hey, so I can just look forward to that rejection happening quite quickly.
Yeah, good. Yeah, they'll do it quick, and you won't have to be, Anyway, crashing on. So Pim recommended us this paper, and if you would like listeners to recommend a paper, do get in touch with us on any of our many social media channels, or you can message us personally if you have a paper that you think we should be covering. So this is called a 5.3 million year old deep sea whale necropolis in the Diamantia zone. That's it, actually. It sounded like I was going to say something else there, but that was the end of the name of the paper. The Diamantia zone. And it was published in Nature by a whole host of authors, primarily from the Institute of Deep Sea Science and Engineering at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. So the lead author is Xiaotong Peng. But there's actually several other authors who will contribute equally to the paper, including Zhou Peng, Zikan Song, Giovanni Banucci, and Mengran Du. So they're all credited as equally contributing to this paper. So it's very important that we give them a shout out.
Nice.
So
I'm glad that Pim recommended this. This was also one of my own PhD students, Felicity, was attracted to this because she loves taphonomy and talking about how things get preserved. But when I first read the headline for this, I thought, oh, some whale fossils, that's not unusual. But this is weird, right? This is weird stuff. We're dealing with a necropolis, which is a cool word to put in a title here.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think so. We were having a chat about this the other day, actually, with regard to the journals that we published at the Natural History Museum about how you can make something press-worthy and grab the attention of reviewers and the press by putting cool, making your title a bit cooler. And I think that Necropolis was definitely helped here. Although it's a super cool story. It also is interesting, I think, because actually the implications the reason that Pim recommended it to me is because he works on bone beds and the taphonomy of bone beds and the origins of bone beds. And that, of course, is a major implication for this study that the authors don't talk about at all in this paper, because they're not really interested in paleontology and taphonomy. But I thought for you and I could probably get stuck into it in quite a deep way, Rob, even though it's not really talked about in the paper.
No pun intended.
No pun intended. Okay, so I need to switch around these. So now these guys, I don't know what they were doing in their submersible, which is called the Fendauser, maybe. But they were cruising about in a submersible.
Hang on. You make that sound very casual and nonchalant. This is some of the most challenging places to do work in, right? This is like kilometers under the sea. Cruising is not rightly the right word. So risking life and limb to sample deep sea environments.
Okay, right. They were presumably on some sort of deep sea expedition. I don't know what it was they were trying to find. I suspect it wasn't lots of whale fossils, although that's what they discovered. No. So I reckon that this was probably one of those sort of very cool chance discoveries that ends up in a Nature paper. Did I mention that this was published in Nature? Anyway, it was published in Nature. So this submersible, which is capable of reaching up to 11,000 metres in depth. And they were diving in this area called the Diamantina Zone, which is an ocean floor fracture zone, which lies in the Indian Ocean, just kind of west of southern Australia. And it's a trough, which at its deepest point gets to more than 7,000 metres. So a deep place, not the deepest. Do you know what the deepest place on the ocean floor is?
Mariana Trench.
Yeah, how deep is it?
I don't know. Do you know?
I reckon it's about 14,000 metres. We can Google
is
it
a trench and a trough the same thing?
No, so this is part of a fracture zone, and I think what this. Okay, so I'm willing to be completely wrong about this, but because I didn't Google it at all, but based on what they're saying, I think this is more like a normal fault. So it's a trough like a Horst, a graben, and a Horst type topography, whereas the Mariana Trench is obviously a subduction zone, where you have a deep ocean trench that is formed because you've got plates descending into the mantle there. So this isn't. Obviously, I don't think this is one of those. I think this is just a deep feature due to fractures on the ocean floor rather than a plate boundary.
I'm mocking you when you said obviously there, because this is obvious to a geologist such as yourself, but it's not obvious to someone like me.
Sorry.
Okay.
Anyway, so they were bimbling about in their sub. And
bimbling.
I'm sure that's what they're doing.
The cruising, bimbling, yeah, okay.
I'm sure their funders would love to hear me call it bimbling about in a sub. That's probably what they write in their grant application. We're going to bimble about in the Diamantina Zone. Anyway, they did 32 dives, and during the course of these 32 dives, they discovered 485 whale skeletons lying on the floor in this relatively small area. So that's kind of what this story is all about. So we can get into a little bit about science and what they found from this discovery. So as you know, the deep ocean isn't very well. There's lots of things that live down there, right? But it's not as biodiverse as other parts of the ocean. So, for example, coral reefs are biodiversity hotspots, and usually the ocean, the shelves, so down to maybe 60 or even 100 meters might be quite biodiverse. But when you get down to the bottom of the ocean, I mean, first of all, sea light and sun water. Let me try that again. Sunlight only penetrates to about 60 meters of depth. So, of course, once you get down, to these sorts of thousands and thousands of meters, you're in complete darkness the whole time. And of course, the pressure of the water also becomes absolutely crushing. So things that live in the deep sea have to be adapted to living in extremely extreme environmental conditions. So when a whale dies, they tend to float out, or they sort of expand, don't they? They kind of float and bloat. Is that right? Is that what they call it?
Bloat and float, yeah. And then, so that's because they build up with the gases. So as a whale dies, the whales die all the time, but they float and bloat. But then eventually they will sink, potentially after they've been exploded.
Sometimes they explode, don't they? Wasn't there a famous case of them trying to move a whale somewhere that had been beached?
So that was the footage from that in the 1970s in America is great. If you haven't seen it, go and check it out. They tried to blow it out with dynamite, and then they learned afterwards why you don't blow up a whale because whale carcass bits did not get disintegrated. They flew everywhere and landed on cars, and seagulls were then invading, and then everything was covered in bad smelling stuff. So don't do that.
Don't blow whales.
When this whale eventually sinks, I guess this is whalefall, which is a well-known phenomenon. It's absolutely massively biologically important for the seabed, right? Because as you pointed out, there's nothing down there. There's no energy production. So when a whale body falls down, it's like a gift from heaven full of energy and resources and carbon. So a whole community of stuff bursts into life when it gets down to the bottom. And it's one of the main ways that energy, biological input happens in the deep sea floor. Because without it, there's just nothing happening down there. Well, I say not nothing. There's bacteria slowly doing things, but can you imagine it's like a Christmas gift coming down from the sky?
It's amazing. Yeah. A whole what do you call it? Like a hamper, a Christmas hamper being delivered to the deep ocean to these brittle stars. Anyway,
I mean, I like my hampers with less rotten whale meat in it, but if I was a crinoid, maybe I'd feel very differently.
So up until this point, the deepest whalefall, which, as you say, whalefalls are very well known and very well documented, but the deepest one that has ever been documented was just over 4,200 meters in the Atlantic Ocean. So this is in the Indian Ocean, and it's like the deepest one. And this, I think, that was documented was just over 7,000 meters. So almost as deep again. So very, very, very deep. So these are the deepest whalefalls that have ever been recorded. Now they identified sort of whale carcasses that were at different phases of being broken down by the animals that live on the seafloor. And there are a series of kind of stages that these go through. And those stages are kind of defined by the animals that are encrusting and living off them. And so they identified what they described as 5 active whale falls in what they call the sulfolophilic stage. So at this point, I guess this means that the animals that are living on them are kind of, there's still probably flesh on the bones and things like that. So the bones are covered in microbial mats. There's that that famous bone-eating worm that seems to be everywhere called, is it Osedax?
Yeah, that's the one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's all over it. There's brittle stars all over it. Now, apparently, at this point, it does indicate that they've been there. They say a prolonged residence on the seafloor, but they don't really define what that means. And in the context of this paper, that might actually mean that they've not been there. They've been there for quite a short amount of time, actually. And so the deepest one of these active whale falls that they found was at 6,800 meters. And kind of cool. This is kind of cool. They first of all, I like the way that the animals that are living on these whales, they group them into macrofauna and megafauna. Now, when you say megafauna to me, I'm thinking, elephant bird, giant sloth. they mean anything more than like a millimetre in size. More than
several centimetres. Yeah. So a hagfish is a megafauna.
Oh, God,
I don't want to think about what a hagfish would be like if it was like 6 meters long. Disgusting.
Yeah, completely. Well, they also include gastropods, bivalves and brittle stars as megafauna.
Fine. Well, anyway, that is a pre-existing term, but anyway, go ahead.
Yes, okay. Macrofaunal taxa, which are more than 0.5 millimeters in size. These include annelids, crustaceans, mollusks, nematodes, and this bone-eating worm, Osedax. And they found them in densities on these skeletons up to 2,840 individuals per square meter. So there's a huge amount of life living on these kind of things. But of those 5, actually, the only one that had enough features left to be recognised was an Antarctic minke whale. So that was the only one they could identify. They couldn't identify any of the others. And actually, it's quite interesting because some of these whale falls, some of them are characterised by just a few vertebrae. So I think the deepest one they recorded as being in this active phase was just 3 vertebrae. So they'll call anything a whale fall, any sort of potentially associated material that they found down there. Now, the super cool thing about this was that all these taxa that are living on the whales are basically new to science. They took some samples from them. They did genetic analysis. They looked at their genomes, and they couldn't match them to anything in GenBank. So, or at least not at the species level. So some they could match to genera, but think they're new species. Some they can't even match to genera. So, everything's new, which is kind of amazing, isn't it? They don't describe them in this paper. They don't go through taxonomy on the genes. I don't really know how people do genetics, do taxonomy with genetics. I guess they just reposit their genome somewhere. But yeah.
So I guess in this instance, everything we've done so far is biology. We've gone and found some whale falls. We found, I guess it's not really surprising that there's loads of new animals living on not new, previously undescribed animals and organisms living on these whale falls, because it's quite a difficult environment. And as you say, whale falls have been described for a long time, but these are the deepest. So you might expect the deepest described whale falls to have some new stuff living on them. But so far, we haven't got into the fossily bit yet, have we?
Yeah, all right, Rob. I've only just got going. Try not to crack on through it too fast. There's not that much to say about this paper.
Okay. Any diehard fossil fans out there? Don't worry. There's fossils coming.
Actually, we can move past these 5 active whale falls, because the vast majority of the whales that they recovered are actually fossils. They define them as fossils, and I'm not sure how we define fossils in this context.
Well, I was going to ask you that question. What do we consider the line between fossil, subfossil, and just dead animal?
Well, I think I don't think there's a temporal line. I think it has to be about the degree of replacement of the bone tissue, hasn't it? Yeah. So how remineralized are the bone tissues, and that depends on the environment in which they're going to be found. So, sometimes you find dinosaur bones in places like Dinosaur Provincial Park. They're 78 million years old, and they look like they died yesterday. There's really there's nothing in filling any of the pore spaces. We're not going to argue that they're not fossils, because they're tens of millions of years old, but they are, they look like they died yesterday. Whereas you can find much more recent fossils that have been infilled, where the mineralogy has been changed. So there isn't a temporal line, is there?
No, I think you're right. I think the replacement and the mineralization is going to be an important component of this, and that's going to come up later on with these ones, isn't it?
Yeah, although I don't think they really talk in a great detail about why they're calling these fossils. I think they just mean they're quite old. I think that's probably what they mean in this paper.
So how do they establish the ages of these things?
Well, they have done some strontium isotopes work. Figure 4 are their strontium isotope plots, and so you can basically calculate the age by comparisons. I guess it's how different it is from modern seawater, because that indicates some sort of diagenetic or radioactive decay of the strontium. And they established that the oldest fossil that they have found here is about 5.8 million years old, although there's some error bars on that. 5.2 million years is the oldest. Most of them are from beaked whales, and I think that is quite interesting, because apparently beaked whales have these rostra, which are extremely dense, so they're pachystotic. So presumably this is related to deep diving, and these are very, very, very dense bone tissue, and so the authors speculate that this could be why they're so well preserved. And for most of the whales, this is all that was preserved. So the vast majority of the whales that they find are beaked whales, although they did identify a baleen whale as well.
Before we move on, I want to talk about the ages, though, because I think this is quite interesting, right?
Yeah.
So, when I read the headline of this, I was first thinking 5 million years old. That's quite interesting, and I assumed they dug them up, but no, they've collected them off exposed on the sea surface. But I also imagine that they were part of the same age. So when I saw the headline of 5 million years, I assumed they were all 5 million years. But looking at the specimens in this, data, there's a really broad spread.
Yeah.
Right. So they're not all from one coeval time zone.
No.
It looks like they're being continually deposited the entire time. So there's only one from that 5 million years. Most of them are 3 million years or less. And then there's like a really continuous blur. Now that's going to be really relevant when we start thinking about the ecology and what we were detecting and what you were saying about taphonomy and bone beds. But so there's a really big age range of them, and it seems to be continuously falling in. So that raises all sorts of interesting questions. What were you going to say? Sorry, I interrupted you.
Absolutely. Well, yeah. You're right. I think a thing that is quite interesting also, and perhaps predictable, is that the two oldest ones, so that 5.2 million year one, and the next oldest one, or nearly the next oldest one, I think, are actually extinct. So they're two taxa that are extinct today. And that's perhaps unsurprising. We don't tend to think that species and genera are around for 5 million years. They probably have a shorter time span on Earth than that. And these are Pterocetus and Ezecoxiphius. And both of these were actually originally described from fossils that were trawled off the coast of South Africa. So they were, potentially there are other whale falls like this elsewhere. And they identify one of these as a new species, basically. But then the vast majority, as you say, are really younger than 2 million. And most of them are taxa that are known today and that are still extant. But some of those extant ones are as old as, one's 2 million years old. So those taxa have been around. They're beaked whales, as I say, Mesoplodon bodoini and Mesoplodon liardi were the two that they identified most commonly. And they actually live in the area today.
This leads me to ask so many questions. Is now the right time for me to ask you questions?
Yeah, go nuts. Let's do it.
No, because this is bonkers, right?
Yeah.
This is absolutely bonkers. So when you and I think about fossils, I mean, even though I might work on Paleozoic fishes in the most part, and you might work on Mesozoic reptiles, really what we're looking at is things getting buried, maybe in an oxbow lake or a river deposit or something, or even a desert or something. And, then it gets buried and we can look at it and we might be looking at a fossil snapshot in time. Sometimes we might be looking at some sort of accumulation, like maybe I might be looking at a river delta and I might have accumulated lots of different things over a period of time. So it's not a snapshot in time, it is an accumulation. Those accumulations don't normally last 2-3 million years. That's really weird. And so that's question number one. Well, do you have any examples of reptiles that are accumulated over 5 million years?
Well, my actually, what I would say was, how do we know? So actually,
you wouldn't know. Yeah,
we don't know, and this is a really, really important point, I think, because mostly our dating in the fossil record, in places where we have ash deposits, tuffs interbedded with our sediments, we can get better dating resolution than 5 million years. We can get down to these days commonly hundreds of thousands, but sometimes in extreme cases tens of thousands of years with radiometric dating. So we should be able to determine how long it took for a bone bed to accumulate. But often we don't have absolute dating, do we, on our fossil deposits?
No.
So if we are looking at a bone bed, we have to use some sort of inference to decide that it's been rapidly buried or that it has accumulated very quickly. And of course, a bed in a geological context is, a layer of rock that has a distinct set of features, usually related to its grain size and the structures within it, that often is considered to be deposited by a single event. So that could be a little pulse of flood from a river. It could be a winter flow or something like that. It could be a debris flow. It could be a storm in the marine realm or something like that. But actually, particularly for the stuff that I work on, we're often looking at floodplains. Now, floodplains do have very slow sedimentation rates because actually, where's the sediment coming from? The sediment only gets deposited there either by the wind or by flood events, right? So rare flood events that might spread out over the floodplain. And that might just deposit a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of sediment every year. So it's possible that when we find these deposits where we've got no real association, so actually I'm thinking very much about this bone bed that we found in Morocco this year, where we just have kind of isolated bones. They're covered in some kind of whitish clay. They're quite rounded. It's like they were weathered on the floodplain for a long time. It makes me wonder how long were those bones lying there for? Could they have been lying there for 5 million years? Could I have a hugely time averaged assemblage that is totally unrepresentative of any community that we ever see living today?
I think that really raises an interesting question. I think we have to remember that the deep sea is weird. Right, this is an unusual environment, maybe not comparable to your floodplain, although it really does.
It is unusual. It is unusual because, so they say actually that they know the sedimentation rate at this site, and it is in the range of 0.05 to 0.5 centimetres per 1,000 years. So this,
So that's interesting, because that is very low. But that also was the first question I was thinking. If you've got a fossil that's been sat on the seabed for 5 million years, well, that's just the extreme example. Let's say 3 million years. I'm deeply suspicious because the deep sea floor doesn't have a lot of sedimentation. But even with that number you just gave me, which is crazy low,
we should be
it's
able
still
to
going to be
calculate
buried. It's still going to be buried over a period of millions of years, isn't it? Like there's always stuff falling down from the sky. There's always this marine snow. If you sit on the, if you sit on the floor, you won't sit. If you had a submersible at the bottom of the sea floor, that sort of accumulation of white snow, the organic matter coming down is happening all the time. And also there's like going to be mineralized matter of like dead coccoliths or whatever coming down, and it just seems that you'd get buried for that period of time, surely.
So I just quickly worked it out with their lowest sedimentation rate, which they said was 0.05 centimeters per 1,000 years. So that corresponds to 250 centimeters in 5 million years. So that's 2.5 meters. So you would expect that an animal that has been lying around, I think that's right, that sounds about right, has been lying around on the sea floor would be buried under 2 meters of sediment. But whales are massive. So maybe their heads, I mean, if their heads are, their heads are
I see,
2 meters long.
Yeah, I didn't think of that.
Then if their head's sticking in vertically, or even if it's not, it could still be sticking out, couldn't it? I mean, there could be more of that skeleton buried. There is also currents. Even in the deep ocean, there are deep ocean currents, which can cause kind of winnowing of sediment, especially.
Yeah, that's possible.
It's very,
and also,
very
it's in this sort of weird trough, isn't it? So maybe there's sorts of weird things happening.
Well, there could be currents moving along that trough or something that actually causing the sediment to be winnowed away, couldn't there?
Well, that also leads to a second question that I guess, I don't know if you were going there, but I've taken you off topic, sorry.
No, I'd sort of finished, to be honest. That's it, really.
Let's focus on this idea of the necropolis.
Yeah.
So there's this idea that there's accumulation. Now, accumulations of death can happen in all sorts of ways that you and I are familiar with. Again, like a lake might get dried out if I'm looking at some fish, or some of the messel pits is an interesting one because there might be some volcanic gas out relating in the sudden death assemblage, or you might be working in some cave deposits where animals keep falling into a cave and dying, like some pandas or some early mammals, what they called the morganucodonts or whatever. They keep falling into a cave and dying, and you get this accumulation. With whale fall, I'd always sort of imagined it as a sort of like a random thing, like a whale sort of dies somewhere, and then you'd expect, if I'm thinking about probability distribution, because we love maths, I'm assuming that every part of the ocean has an equal probability of a whale falling down. So to get a concentration is weird, but they highlighted this idea that maybe the whales are going down. Maybe you read the paper, but I skimmed it. I'm sorry, but this idea that the whales might be dying because of the particular circumstances of this trough, where they're coming in and struggling to get out and getting trapped and dying. Did I read that right?
Well, there's a bit of both there. So, I mean, they calculated a density of the whales in the area where they dived of 759.5 individuals per square kilometre on the seafloor.
Which is bonkers.
That's
They're normally
insane.
really rare individual events.
Absolutely insane. I mean, I guess that's because it's over 5 million years it's accumulated, right? But I mean, so basically they said that there's two different possibilities here, and because they've got different whales. So they've got these beaked whales, which apparently are deep diving whales. They are known to kind of browse at depths. So those ones, maybe, they get a bit enthusiastic because it's really great down there to browse or something and go too deep and drown or whatever. I don't know. So there was that possibility, and that might be why you've got all these beaked whales down there. But also they found this minke whale, this Antarctic minke whale, and those are not known to inhabit depths greater than 150 meters. So that's not deep diving. That's just a whale
that one must have just fallen in,
just going past and died, right? and accumulated. But of course, there's also the thing with as I said earlier, and I said we might come back to. This seems like a good time. Most of the fossils that are preserved are beaked whales, but this appears to be, and the only bits that are preserved are these very, very, very dense rostrils, which clearly have a much greater chance of not being destroyed by taphenoid processes, by these bone-eating worms and by these microbial mats and stuff. They're not as quickly digested because the bone is so dense. So is it actually that there might have been many more whales or many more different types of whales, but they're not able to be either identified by the researchers or they didn't preserve as well because they don't have these very characteristic rostrils and they haven't preserved. So I think there's a whole bunch of different things going on here. It could be that some of the whales are that there is a bias with these deep diving whales that are becoming trapped in this trough for whatever reason. It could also be, though, that we're just, there's some sort of taphonomic bias around the beaked whales being preserved longer than any of the other whales. I also wonder, they didn't talk at all about ocean currents down here. So if this is a trough, is there the possibility, as we said, of some sort of ocean current? I mean, to move a whale fossil, it's got to be quite a big current, hasn't it? You would have thought. I don't know the sort of speeds of currents.
Moving a whale carcass that's landed, that's hard. But if you're still floating down, then presumably that you can...
that's true. So is there something within the water column that is causing, like a funneling effect?
Are they getting funneled in?
Interesting.
Potentially. I guess you'd have to be a fly on the wall or a worm on the surface to observe.
Can we pause for a second?
Sure. Is it bread time?
It's bread time. Okay. I think I can hear.
Right. Okay. I think we could leave that in. Right, listeners, we're pausing because Susie's going to go get a bread out the oven. Susie, how's your bread looking?
The bread looks really, really good, and I just want to make it clear that that wasn't a euphemism. I was actually getting my bread out of the oven, just in case.
Susie, no one thought it. What euphemism could that possibly have been?
I don't know, but it does sound like it could be euphemism, isn't it? Susie's just got to get her bread out the oven.
No, I don't think anyone anywhere is thinking that. Right, I want to pick up where you left off with this idea of this sort of really weird funneled environment.
Oh yeah.
Now I'm going to take on a detour now.
Oh okay.
Jason Statham. It's Jason Statham time.
It's Jason Statham. Have we got a theme tune for Jason Statham? Maybe we need a
We haven't got a Jason
Statham time.
I haven't got a Jason Statham jingle. The Meg. Have you seen The Meg?
No.
Oh, you're missing out. You're missing out. So, The Meg is a Netflix film with Jason Statham.
Are Netflix sponsoring us?
No. Do you think production values would be this bad? This is done in my bedroom with no Netflix money.
Maybe they should.
Now, Jason's in The Meg, which is a co-production with some Chinese productions or companies, I think. Is based on the megalodon, which presumably you've heard of, right? Yes, the giant Sharkarodon, massive shark. So this is the biggest shark that might have ever existed as a hyper predator in about went extinct about 3.5 million years ago. Now I was always confused about this because in The Meg, Jason Statham has to go and punch a Meg in the face, of course, because that's Jason Statham, that's what he has to do. But I was always perplexed as a sort of biologist. How is the Meg surviving? Now in The Meg, the premise is that it lives in this sort of deep sea trapped zone in like some sort of trench where it's sort of like kept in, and then they sort of invaded this zone. But how of course that work? How does an organism get trapped? But they had some contrived plot device about temperature differentials or whatever, or some sort of layer trapping them in, and then they get released and then suddenly it goes crazy. Now we know, right? This is a window or this weird funnel of this odd deep sea trench of a weird ecosystem where things are getting funneled in and trapped potentially. Now, second question. People are really obsessed with The Meg. It's like, the more recent equivalent of the excitement that people have for mosasaurs and dinosaurs. Could we expect, but we know nothing about it other than its teeth. Could we expect to find a megalodon in this environment?
What, you mean a megalodon fossil?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, not a real one, because they're not a live one.
No, they're dead. That's
going to make Emma Bernard's head explode. That's the question that she's asked more than anything else. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, why not? That'd be cool, wouldn't it? I guess the issue
I wonder if
is that they're cartilaginous, aren't they? And they don't preserve very well as possible. So if most of the bones have gone of most of our whales, what's the chances of finding a cartilaginous?
Well, it does raise an interesting taphonomic question. And you've already highlighted that the different whales have different preservation potentials based on the density of their bones. And if you're made of cartilage, then you're unlikely to get preserved in a whale-fall environment. Mm-hmm. But I want to float it because it's an interesting. I want to be kept alive by this exciting possibility that we're going to go into this trench, or this Chinese submersible is going to go in there and find a Meg fossil just lying on the surface from 4 million years ago.
That would be super cool, wouldn't it? It'd be super.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're allowed to do that. Let's have speculation station. There we go. Play the jingle.
Speculation station.
Okay. The other thing that this put me in mind of was this isn't quite so relevant. Your daughter's a bit older than my daughter, I guess. Did you ever have to watch the Octonauts when you were younger?
Yeah, for some reason my daughter really hated the Octonauts. I don't know why. I made her cry. She was very scared of it. It was very scary. Were there
Well,
scary things in the Octonauts? I think it was pretty scary.
Your daughter and I are on the same page there. I hated the Octonauts. My kids liked it, and we had to watch it all the time. And a lot of, I think, middle-class British parents like the Octonauts because it's sort of, oh, look, it's scienciness. But I wanted to punch Captain Barnacles in the face.
Okay. I see that there's some unresolved anger here, Rob. Let's talk it through. Why?
I wanted to punch Captain Barnacles in the face, a little smugness. But anyway, the point is they go around exploring the deep sea and they do things. But there's one episode where they talk about paleontology and they go and find a coelacanth. But they're digging up these fossils under the sea. And I thought that really annoyed me because that's not what paleontology is about. They go and find this coelacanth and they sort of dig it out. It's like, none of this is how paleontology works at all. What are you doing?
Well, also, coelacanths are still alive. You don't need to go and dig them up. They're just floating around. They found them. They're not extinct.
Exactly. But Captain Barnacles did go on to explain that they are alive today, well, as a living fossil, although that's not a phrase we use so much anymore. Oh, there we go. Susie is looking quite exasperated, everybody. Well, the use of the phrase living fossil. But that was the sort of pop culture interpretation of underwater paleontology, but this is different. This is just going down to the deep sea. Captain Barnacles should have found these things. He should have gone and done it.
What was he doing? Waster.
I don't know why I went on about the Octonauts. I should have been picking up on the more interesting and important conversation we were having about the Meg.
Well, yeah, I think there is the potential, right, that we could find a whole treasure trove of extinct species at the bottom of the ocean. But I mean, there is still this unresolved issue, I think, that you talked about, that not all fossils have equal preservation potential, and if the only things that are able to survive over, couple of million years on the seafloor are the incredibly dense rostrils of the largest vertebrates ever to have lived, doesn't kind of bode well for other things, does it? So I suspect that there isn't a treasure trove, and that because there's such a low sedimentation rate, really what we need for fossils to be preserved in the geologic record is rapid burial, and this is kind of the antithesis of rapid burial. So we're not seeing. We're not going to be seeing loads and loads and loads of things preserved because ossidaxes are going to have eaten all their bones, basically.
Yeah, that's also, I guess, what I always find a bit surprising. Okay, so just on a final note of skepticism, I guess, this is going to be difficult because I think this is pushing the boundaries of what you and I might know about isotope geochemistry.
Yeah.
But I was thinking about, why aren't these things being consumed? They're not being entombed, completely exposed to life. So I can see that, these worms might be eating it. The worms actively eat the bones, right? The gastropods will eat the bones. There's bacteria will eat the bones. How can it just sit on the exposed surface for millions and hundreds of thousands of years without getting destroyed? So immediate skepticism, let alone getting buried.
Yeah, I mean,
well,
let me come back at that, because I have to say I did not interrogate the methods around the dating. I presume that some reviewers would have looked at this, although the reviewers are likely to be biologists and not geologists. But I didn't interrogate the methods, and I didn't fully understand them because I didn't read them largely. In fact, do they even have the methods for the strontium isotopes? They do, because they say that they are. I'm just skimming through them now. They said, there's not enough information in here to tell you actually what the rationale behind the method is in the paper. So what I don't know, I mean, I presume that strontium isotopes are a well-established method for dating things, but they say they compared it with modern seawater. So I don't know how far back in time strontium isotope ratios of modern seawater have existed for, but I'm willing to suggest that it's not 5 million years, because in that time we've had entire ice ages, which surely have changed the isotopic ratio of seawater. I would have thought if the
Well, that was the question I had, which is why it's difficult, because it's beyond my capabilities of understanding about isotope geochemistry, was because the deep sea environment here is really weird. We're going really deep. Is it representative of the sort of calibration points that we might use for strontium elsewhere? Is there been some sort of level of diagenesis or transformation or weirdness? Because all of this rests on that figure of the calibration point, which is just a graph and looking at a line.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that raises a problem. How secure are these? And I think I want some ground truthing of that. Maybe, I mean, strontium isotopes are used all the time, but in this particular weird, unusual environment. But let's turn to our listeners and ask if there's any isotope geochemists listening who can either confirm or deny this.
Well, I mean, I can. Maybe I'm going to go away and look this up. I'm going to go and look up how they use strontium isotopes for dating, because strontium isotopes are used for lots of things, but dating relative to modern day seawater values, I think you're absolutely right. There could be some real questions, and the whole crux of the paper is around that. I mean, the fact that they identified 2 extinct species supports the fact that they're old, right? But I think the 5 million year, there are. Can I just say though, at least the graph's got some error bars.
We're picking up on the thing. I think a graph like that definitely needs them.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so thanks, Susie. That was an interesting and weird story. I mean, it really challenges a lot of ideas that we understand about paleontology. I mean, less so about whale evolution. This is much more about taphonomy and
well, it is.
the sorts
although
of windows we have.
That's not what the paper talks about at all. It's very much a biology paper. But I think the actual really interesting aspects of it are the implications for bone bed accumulation for taphonomy and fossilization. Yeah, for sure.
What do you think our take-home messages are then? Although I guess you just said that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly right. I mean, I think we need to. We're seeing here a time averaged accumulation. If their dating's right, we're seeing a time averaged accumulation of a series of bones or a whale bone bed, a multi-specific bone bed that, had we dug it up in the fossil record, we would have no idea about how long what its duration was, and that duration is 5 million years, which is a hugely long time. There's been 3 ice ages in the last 5 million years, and things are radically different on Earth 5 million years ago. So the community of whales that you see in these fossils is not representative of the community today. So it does make us have to think about, when I see a bone bed, how, does this kind of challenge my preconceived ideas about how long that bone bed might have taken to accumulate?
Absolutely. One of the other things that I maybe should have mentioned was that deep sea environments like this are quite rare as fossils, right? Because if you want to look at something on the oceanic plate, normally it's subducted and destroyed, and you don't get good sedimentation. For a nice fossil deposit, it needs to be, on a continental plate, it needs to be deposited, it needs to be sedimentation, it needs to be encapsulated. This is like the antithesis of that. There's no sedimentation, it's on an oceanic plate. Those oceanic plates get subducted and destroyed. So getting a nice fossil insight is unusual. So maybe the only way to do it is go by getting in a sub and looking down at what's sat on the surface.
Well, absolutely.
Because you can't dig up that surface.
No, I know. Actually, I mean, maybe this is something else we can see whether anybody knows about. Write in and tell us if you know of any, at least, vertebrate fossils that have ever been found in an oceanic crust. I mean, we do see oceanic crust at the surface and on land. It's when it's been, sometimes rather than getting subducted, it gets abducted, and you get chunks of oceanic crust brought up onto land. But there's one in Cornwall, famously. The lizard is a ophiolite, a piece of oceanic crust brought up onto land. But of course, when that tectonic process of bringing up that crust metamorphoses and deforms the rocks to such an extent that you're vanishingly unlikely to be able to identify any fossils that are left within it. So, and about 80% of the sea floor that we have today that forms our deep ocean is younger than about 100 million years old. So anything older than 100 million years old is going to have gone, has been subducted.
Absolutely. That window's gone. No way you're going to get that. If you want to learn more about deep sea fossils, you could come listen to the episode we had with Emily last week. Hooray. I'm not saying that to you specifically. Although
I should do. I didn't listen to it.
You need to listen to that. Well, thanks, Susie. Enjoy your bread.
Thank you.
And I will catch up with you another time.
See you then, Rob.
The Fossil Files was created by Robert Sansom and Susanna Maidman.
The Fossil Files is a labour of love created in our spare time with no budget, so we really welcome any support you can provide us via our Patreon.
There you can access bonus content and join in the discussion by posting your own questions or even participate in live episodes.
In either case, we want to hear what you think. You can let us know what you thought about the topics we discussed or make suggestions for future papers in our social media channels.
You can find links to our Blue Sky, Instagram and YouTube channels on our website fossils.libsyn.com.